I'm in the midst of the Union move, and Reno made a successful initiative check. I don't know if I had to do this because I'm keeping some contact here. I'm in small arms range, and that's usually sufficient to say you're continuing your attack. But I made one with the orders delay attack until Corps is fully formed up. I feel like I can keep this kind of or is formed up. I want to get more of the 9th Corps in play before I launch this attack. I don't have the numbers right now, and I'm just pissing away my troops. So, whether I needed this or not, that's irrelevant. I've decided I did need it, at least at this moment. But what we're seeing here is this attempt by this unit to try to pull out and pull back. Remember, they have to make a morale check in order to do that. That's sadly in the South Mountains exclusive rules instead of having been added to the RSS, even though the designer has more or less admitted the RSS needs this as a change. Well, it's not in that rule. It's not in the rule book that came with the game, and it really should be across the board for the series if it's decided that that needs it. This is a normal morale check with those special rules. So I'm going to check this unit. That's the 1K9. As I move all these stupid sheets of paper around. Which should be visible somewhere. Oh, jeez. The unit's the 23rd Ohio. I'm not used to having to look up the specific unit. That's fine. It's a B morale. I'm used to looking it up on the brigade level, so I forget the final number there, the actual unit. So B morale, nothing special going on. I get a 16, which means I can get out of there normally. I don't remember if there's some sort of withdrawal fire for pulling out. I don't think so, but I gotta check that. There is no withdrawal fire. That's Great Battles of American Civil War. So I've pulled back and I've gotten back into range. I'll throw him back here where I'm within 2 hexes of my supply wagon, so I can pull supplies. That can actually be done over impassable terrain from what I can tell. And I've got to be at least 4 hexes from the enemy. That's all regimental sub-series changed rules to this, where you have to kind of keep your supply wagons further from the front. And probably wise anyway. Now we go to the defensive fire, where the Confederates are going to be able to get one last shot in, one more shot in at these units. I think the Union's going to be sitting there for a while, but I do have sort of the right to break off combat a little bit if I don't like it by the orders that I've taken, by my construction. The Union had a limbered gun in this hex. Now that's in range and line of sight of these low ammo nappies that were here. By the way, I lost my ammo completely there. Another good roll at 12. The low ammo nappies got themselves a 10. I really suspect these dice. And they ended up taking out another gun. I've switched to using my Wellington's victory counters. They're my most common set to use for other games because I have twice as many as I need for them. I would have needed Terrible Swift Sword if I needed to. I would have needed 3 sets of counters, including these suckers, for the artillery, if I had been tracking ammo on a per battery basis, unless I tracked the ammo on paper. Anyway, ended up causing a morale check and some straggling to the unit on top. That's one thing when you shoot at artillery with counter battery fire. As long as you're close enough, it's the other things, the straggling and the morale checks are made against the infantry unit in the space, if there is one. If there's no infantry in the space, then the artillery makes the morale check and there's no straggling. But I took a gun out there. No rules for exploding caissons and stuff like that. Now, this one's out of ammo, and I'm going to have to figure out how to get him supplied, because here's the problem. I can't just detach the supply wagon over there to do that, I don't think. I think that has to stay within my general command radius, and that's going to be a problem for the Confederates here. I'll see if I'm allowed to do that. I would have done it earlier if I was. Now the Union gets to shoot back, though. fire finished up, the Confederates got pushed back a little bit here, again, not in this level of detail again. And then we hit some fire at these guys, which didn't do anything. This long-range sniping tends to be on lower valued tables, which is going to mean that the Union has an advantage with their core supply right there. When they get the out-of-supply markers, they can recover from them better. We get to remove the shaken markers and the low ammo because I'm in range to do so, and those will go away. A couple of quick complaints I'm noticing. One, the difference between the low ammo and the out of ammo, it's not different enough. I see those counters, and it's bad enough they're close to the shaken, but I'm not sure which one it is, so I might try to look. The other one is, it's really a pain in the butt compared to the CWB to look up the fire values of all these units. Now, this was always kind of a hassle in the Great Battles of American Civil War games, and now this has taken it on. It's not so much... So here's the thing. Yes, I don't have the numbers under the counters. That's a hassle to look up because you pick it up, you look at the number, you start adding them up, etc. But on the charts, I'm having to look at the charts far more often. The fire levels in CWB abstracted that process enough that generally what I could do is put little markers when something fell below a fire level. You could use a fire level to shoot out of any hex. That was your maximum here, kind of like an 8 is your maximum here. Almost every unit had an 8A fire level if the counter was on the board. If the unit itself would have at least an A fire level. There were a few that didn't. I'd put a counter under them to remind me, and it would be pretty obvious with the thickness of the counters, etc. Hey, there's something under there. What is that? Uh-oh. When you use line extensions, sometimes units break down into smaller things, and then you'd have to worry about it. But here, I'm finding myself having to make a number check either under the counter if I was doing it that way, and gods, those would create so much trouble with me. So I would have to be using the real number counters that I like better. Or, as I'm doing, looking at the chart. Now, the problem with the chart is it doesn't have the number on it. The number of strength points in the unit is on the counter. So I have to look at the counter and the chart and look at the counter. It's also difficult to read these counters. These guys aren't so bad, but there's some of them that are almost unreadable because of the color choices on them. Not that one. I thought this darker would be harder, but he's not too bad. But there's ones where the color and graphics choices, you can just tell they've got basically, a certain pattern to the graphics for CWB games. But someone kind of amateurish added some changes to this one in terms of how they would display some kind of odd units. And the units really stand out, but they're unreadable. I'll show you one that is similar, but it doesn't count as this supply wagon here. You can see it pretty close if you zoom in, but this is about what my eyes see. All right. Right side of the turn, just so I don't forget, because there is a lot of mechanical action in the game. Another random event, and another morale check event where you get a unit falling back again, and you can see their condition's not good. The Union's kind of wishing at this point that they could press the attack, but, well, those are going to recover largely, and I did find out I can move the supply wagon pretty much wherever I like, as far as I can tell. It's not under command restrictions, I don't think. Hill was unable to get initiative, so he's not going to send over another brigade over there. It could be dangerous if I did, because that could open up this gap here. It's going to be a long time before I get any reinforcements. I think mine come in around there. Maybe they're... No, they're more Confederates. Hill's got some more troops coming in at 11 a.m. in that pile. So, I guess both sides are getting a flow of troops coming. Now we move into the 10 o'clock turn. This is when those Union reinforcements that got delayed from the 9:30 turn are coming into play. I don't know. That'll be a Union turn, so I'll flip that over. Put my dice up there to remind me I'm at the end of the turn. Confederates exchanged some fire with the Union. They took out another cav unit out here, did some damage to this one. Artillery fire on the limbered guns, it was not effective, and now they're going to be able to unlimber and start dealing some hurt. The situation is such that the Union does wish they could keep pushing. Too bad I wrote those rules, those orders for myself. With the another low ammo unit, it's getting rough for the Confederates up here. But once this gets there, they'll be in more solid position. Meanwhile, I'm trying to deploy here, and I've got these guns out here facing God knows where or why. It looked like that would be a dangerous flank, but I almost feel like I ought to pack at least one of them in and bring it back around. All right. Probably should spend less time on these videos talking. I remember when I did the 7 days, obviously I stepped back for quite a distance, but I just don't think that there's, much going on in each 15-minute turn right now that needs to be discussed. Union's kind of glad it didn't charge yet, and couldn't. For one thing, it means that they can do some straggler recovery here. This is an hourly turn. It's every other turn, the half hours that are allowed. But we had some unlimbered artillery finally up here. We've got some limbered artillery here. The Confederates can't really do anything about. Their guns are here. Some guns unlimbered here, though, but those low ammo Napoleon cannons blew a morale check against them. Now, there were bonuses on the morale check, but the unit disordered, ran back, is hurt, took the guns with them, and that kind of slows down the whole procedure. The auto rally, well, actually we do the straggler recovery first before the auto rally. Let's just show you the process for that. That's for these two poor little units. Let's look at the 1K9. We'll say that's the leftmost. Sometimes I don't always pay as much attention as I should to things. What's its number? That's the Chicago Dragoons. They're not really 1K9. So they're a B morale unit, and all we do there is look over here, B morale. Oh, we're using a big die roll. And it's a day turn, so I need a 56 or better. I do not get it, so nothing shows up there, and that's removed. And the other one, quite simply, is a C morale, which says 63 or better. And that also doesn't happen. It's a slow process to get your units back, but usually worth doing, even if they're not terribly useful. These guys aren't going to be able to do much. They're permanently broken at this point. But a couple extra strength points I can stack together. They're armed with carbines. They might do something useful somewhere. You can also use them on some guard duty. It was a silly idea to engage them. I didn't realize how fragile those units were. And that'll flip it over to the Confederate turn. And, well, we'll see what they can do to hold their position. Right here we've got Crook coming up, joining the main Union force back. D.H. Hill got a initiative, and he's moving Anderson's force, which is kind of trailing him here, and these guns on an individual brigade order. He can detach up to 3 brigades on this, which is quite a bit, off to move to Fox's Gap and defend. That's going to put him in the same general region to try to stiffen the Confederate resistance, because it seems pretty clear that's where the main Union attack is going to be for a while. I'll be getting more Confederate troops up in Turner's Gap before I think the Union will have forces in that direction. You also see I've got some straggler recoveries of my own, including on a unit that's still formed, assuming it's taken some straggler losses. I think it has. I've got to be at least 4 hexes away from the enemy. That's standard CWB rules. Over here I've got an out of supply unit that I moved up close enough. I'm going to be pulling units off the line in order to do that. The exchange of gunfire was pretty light here, but it's pretty obvious the Union is not poised to attack. They're not pressing the attack right now, so I can afford to pull units off the line and weaken it a little bit. Of course, the Union could always take an initiative order, or maybe their orders will be activated when they come here. The Confederates don't know that. Got a gun somewhere that's going to rally completely, and then I got to take care of these suckers. Ooh, this guy can't. Straggler recover. Oh yeah, you can. That's a low ammo, not a shaken marker. The old low ammo markers were red, kind of like the Bloodlust over here, kind of a darkish red. So it's hard to remind myself that the new markers mean anything different than the colors that I'm used to in this system. An annoying choice to have changed the colors for this particular game, maybe for the entire RSS, but I don't think so. I seem to remember the older ones had those nice blood red counters for the ammo losses. It's not like bloodlusts aren't obvious anyhow. So I'll make those checks and then we'll go on a little further on. I tried for an initiative to launch an attack against what was looking like a weaker Confederate line, but he didn't get it. The Confederate, and that's the problem with these command games. The original command games, you very seldomly rolled for the initiative table. You just kind of said, you know, it's not worth those risks. But when you start getting to these games that have been more recently coming out, I feel like you're rolling for initiative more and more on them. And it just becomes kind of this tedious burden, hey, when do I get to actually activate or whatever, that takes away from what had been kind of a cleaner system before. This one seems very affected by it just because there's no commanders on the board yet. Now, if this got into a bigger battle, and for example, if they did Shiloh under these kind of rolls, and the second Manassas has them too for the Confederates, it's kind of annoying. It just, you end up, not being able, you're doing more mechanical crap than you are writing your orders and figuring out broad strategies. You're constantly rolling to change orders in a way that I don't think you often do in the other games. I know that I'm doing it more often here because this situation's kind of dicey. And I've sort of entered into another orders. Anyway, the Confederates were able to drop this, this should be disordered. Well, I recovered already. To drop this unit back from the line, there was some artillery in there just through fire. The Union, I haven't fired that thing. I had better shoot that off. Okay, so I've got to fire that still. That's a rifle 4. I fired at this unit, so I'll fire at this one. A rifled artillery 4 at a range of 3 is 2. So go down. So I've got 2 times 4 is going to be 8 shot. Range of 3 is fine. I'm allowed to do that. So I'm going to be rolling on this table with a shift against me for the wall, which puts me on the 4 to 6 table. And that's what I fired at this with the infantry. And it didn't do me anything. Woohoo! I get a big roll. Well, that big roll gets me a low ammo on the artillery. And it's going to cause a casualty, which I have to worry about. I guess I'll mark this all down. I'll come back, but okay, before I dealt with this, I had noticed something that now I forgot. Oh yeah, those long-range artillery duels I was talking about over in the CWB system, and I said, well, they're going to be impossible now. No, I skimmed over and I was looking at some other rule and accidentally found the rule that I was looking at. It only affects when you're firing at limbered artillery. That's stuff that's going to be behind the line anyway, so you're not really going to be dealing with the troops that are in the front line there. They're not going to take losses. So that actually makes a great deal of sense. And would probably translate well over into the CWB base rules as well. Strangely enough, they had the sub-series rules, but they didn't bother changing the base rules for that. And I think it's a sensible thing. If you're firing at limbered artillery at a distance, you're not going to be getting any hits on the men. Unlimbered artillery still works the same way as CWB. Anyway, I'll finish dealing with this and then go on to the Confederate turn without coming back. We can kind of see the morale check's not going to be bad, but the straggle check is going to cause some more loss. The Confederates pull some guns down here off the line in order to get their supplies back. They're presenting a very weak setup here, but they drove one of the column units back here. Now this was here. It would be blocked by this, but you can fire through enemy units when you're conducting artillery fire. So I wanted to hit the in column units that were in the rear, you got to be a lot more careful in this game than in most games. You can't just screen things with a couple units in a line. I'm used to doing that. Nah, you got to take the time and form up. That's kind of a pain in the ass, but I think it's very well done to represent that. Anyway, we're on Straggler Recovery turn up next with the Union. No new troops for anybody until the next hour. And those look like they're all... Oh no, there's some Ninth Corps stuff there, Wilcox. I thought they were all Confederates. But yeah, feels like if the Union's going to take Fox's Gap, this is the time to take it because there's a lot more Confederates coming in than Union very shortly. There's a whole bunch of Union that come in late. When does this scenario stop? This is the biggest one for the game, but well, it's actually the only one. It goes all the way until 8 p.m., which is going to get us into the night rolls. Those are kind of weird in the sense that you can't fire at distance and stuff, but they definitely... It's nice to see a game not end right at the end of the daylight hours. I always found that kind of disturbing because if there was still a combat going on, it could quite easily, if it's close range fighting that's kind of hefty, it's quite easy to push it into at least through these twilight hours and then into the these are going to be the ranges that you can see at those different times, I guess. That's not clear there. And then here, you're going to be night visibility is 2 hexes only. And the system basically says you can't move adjacent to people anymore once it becomes nighttime. Now, this is a little different because adjacent is further away in the CWB games. So you can actually conduct visible firing during the night visibility at range 2, I guess. I don't know. I wouldn't expect... I would say you can't move within small arms range at night once it actually falls to full night, the 2 hex range. Anyway, at least it allows you to see a little bit into when the final few shots of the day would actually probably happen in some of these battles. Up to the 10:45 turn, the Union's having trouble making it up the hill with the the 2nd Brigade of the K Division. Getting shot back by this artillery, and that allowed the Confederates to push this artillery forward another hex. It's not unlimbered yet, and so it's kind of at some risk, but the Union isn't charging, so I feel like I can protect it and hold that more important location, especially important as Anderson's forces are coming up to maybe fill in the gap a little here. Over here, the Union ran out of ammo on its guns. These guys were low on ammo before they ran out, so they got to pull back, and that's always a troublesome situation because as soon as you put a limbered gun in the line at this kind of range, you're starting to take some real casualties. You can see, though, the Confederate ammo, it's down into the, yeah, it's at 80 essentially, 79, so there isn't a lot there. There's a lot of turns, and I'm firing... There's 45 turns in this whole scenario, and that means 2 rounds per turn, and I've been firing more than that. Now there's usually some lulls in the scenarios, but you run out of ammo and you're done for basically in this system. In the old CWB system, you got to fire at half strength when you were out of ammo, but that doesn't hold for this, I don't believe. I forgot to mention, when I did the little playthrough thing, I think I showed the stragglers being checked after the morale check. That's incorrect. The stragglers are checked before the morale check. So a straggler roll can cause the unit to break, but a unit breaking due to straggles from the morale table won't cause a penalty on the straggle table, whatever, you know. No reason to really go back except that I want to make sure I'm not leaving this incorrect impression of how to play, or that I wouldn't eventually figure out. Remember what the rolls were. Basically, while playing, I was saying, wait, that doesn't strike me as right. I remember the straggle roll coming first, and indeed it does. Alright, onward. Okay, as I push into the 11 a.m. turn, and I'm going to have to obviously set up the chart for the next hour, But this is the situation. Both sides are trying to push units back on the line. The Union's actually gotten their infantry up there. But the tricky thing is the artillery. The artillery advances limbered, and if they're already established guns, it gets blown up or shot back. You can see here, actually, the Union picked up a bloodlust from some artillery fire there. The Confederates have managed, on their turn, to get their artillery pretty much unlimbered, and they're in a strong defensive position now. Anderson's troops are coming up. I'll be able to shift over. It's going to be tough to take this Fox's Gap with even, once the whole 9th Corps comes into play, whenever that is. But, that's probably, something around 2 p.m. or something. It's going to start coming in full strength. I think Reno's lost his chance, basically. I'm kind of disinclined to roll for the initiatives to try to bring the whole force into play again, unless the Confederate line starts showing some real weaknesses once more. With Anderson up there, now it becomes kind of okay, can I launch something if I'm getting new troops in at the Turner's Gap area, because that's sort of the weak point right now. Basically, I've got 2 brigades against his 2 brigades, and he's got the defensive terrain and a preponderance of artillery in that area. But Turner's Gap looks really, really weak right now, and I'd like to get up there. But the cav is not the thing to do it. We saw earlier both sides took the losses over here, that you really don't want to commit your cav into the battle. They get, some of them, like this big old unit, has some fair staying power and has been able to do something, even though it's only got a D morale. It's still got enough firepower that it has some value. But those guys with 1-point carbines, 2-point carbines, they just dissolve on the first hit, and that's no fun. You don't want to see that happen to your troops. Among other things, and yeah, when I remember it, I do it. That's causing us to get closer to losing some of these brigade effectiveness ratings. What I was going to say is, it's not too big a goal for Reno. He's got to roll a 3 every turn to see if he can continue the attack, and I usually remember to do that. But the Confederates, though, they're starting to get there. Garland is actually wrecked now. That just happened. So he's going to start facing some numbers here. Now, Garland is only a 3 for command rating, a 4 for morale. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units, 3 of which are wrecked. Doesn't matter that his unit's wrecked, because he's not part of a corps right now. So 5 subunits with 3 wrecked. He's going to be over on the 2. Now he's a 3 on the 2. He's going to need to roll not a 4, because there's a -2 for defensive orders, but a 2 or better. That sounds pretty easy. So he's still not at the point where he could fail corps defensive orders. You basically can't until you're wrecked. Or if you have a really, really bad leader, even there, until you start taking losses. But his command is actually wrecked. He would be, under the old CWB rules, 1 of 1. He'd be on the 3 table here, which means he'd need to roll a 4 or better, which could actually fail. And the units are a little sturdier. All right, I'll deal with the reinforcements, set them up, and then to more battle tomorrow. When you're actually attacking, and you've taken any casualties, well, any fire combat yet, there's always a chance that your corps could stop. And here, the Union Corps stopped. It's going to fall back. That may actually be a good thing, because this is beginning to stiffen. Basically, what I was looking at was, I'm going to roll for initiative and see if I can overrun it now. I don't feel like I have the force to take Fox's Gap, though, and this may give me a chance to start swinging the 9th Corps into place for an attack against maybe Turner's Gap, which looks weaker, more weakly held. I have to be careful, though, to make sure that things are protected. I don't want to see the troops from Fox's Gap come down and hit me from behind, for example. That's the danger there. I'll probably make an initiative roll because it takes a while to get things running. I don't know what I want from it yet, but Reno is pretty good. And he gets it, so I'm going to write him some orders. I don't know why. So my choice of orders for the Union may not be the wisest of all, because remember, some of the 9th Corps is still off map coming in. I gave the whole Corps orders to skirt the Confederate positions in order to make it to the road at Lambert's Field. Now by skirt, I mean at best lightly engage, but try to take the best, quickest route that you can, which might mean the artillery might want to be sailing down this trail and heading this way, which could be kind of difficult to coordinate. Alternatively, I also leave open the possibility of coming down through here. What I can't do is just try to cut this road or something. That would be an all-out attack. I'm leaving it open how far I'm going to allow the outflank to go offline. And then from there, to take the road down to Turner's Gap. Now this is a complex order, and support an attack made there. Planning on the other, what is it, the 1st Corps, to be attacking up Forrester's Road. This is going to take a long time to execute. And I'm going to get in some trouble around Turner's Gap because that's where the Confederate reinforcements, I think, are coming, but they may be coming here too. So there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff going on there. We'll see. I'm probably never going to make it to Turner's Gap before I have another Corps failure, because this unit is beginning to get chewed up a little bit. On the other hand, we disintegrated another Confederate unit here. Oh, this is a hard job too, because I have some artillery stacked in here. Not just because artillery has trouble moving in the woods, but the stacking rules for this game, it costs 2 extra movement points to enter a hex with the unit and 2 extra movement points to leave a hex with the unit. And that includes artillery. So it's very, very difficult to shift your force rapidly in this kind of sideways manner. CWB, I'm used to being able to do it, certainly in the old Great Battles of the American Civil War stuff, which I generally just shorten as TSS because to me that's the core. But in this game, it is really a bitch to maneuver around, especially, you know, it's not so bad. You can cut in front of your units, you can cut behind them, but in some cases you want to stack with them in order to give yourself firepower. So, you know, I've got one unit, basically. This unit will be the next guy here while other people kind of leapfrog around him. It's going to take some time. It takes some time. These guys are stacked, so they move together with artillery movement cost, which isn't very good. I could unstack them, but actually that ended up costing the infantry, putting them in the same place, and then the artillery would have to stack to go into there, and I'm not sure that would have been even possible. As things open up a little bit and the road becomes available, I'm sure I can split them off. Not yet into column, no reason to be. I need to keep in command, and I need to keep some pressure on this side. But we did push back a couple of the Confederate units in the firing, because this is where the new, stronger units are in place. I think we go to the Confederate turn now, and hopefully I have enough time. Alright, the 11 a.m. turn ends with, the Confederates tried to shift their forces over. Obviously, it looks like the Union is going to try to attack them from a different angle. I don't know that the orders have changed, that they're going this way, but either way, shifting Anderson over in this direction seems like a wise idea. Union fire, that artillery piece that I left especially, managed to generate, first of all, the dissolution of whatever unit was there, the 5th North Carolina over here, which was once a good unit, but its 7 strength points are gone now. Now, not completely gone, only 2 casualties, the rest is all stragglers. That can be recovered, but not this turn. In fact, the route through from the artillery from there broke up one of my straggler recovery attempts. You know, these units that are pretty wiped out, though, the 12th and 20th North Carolina, And that's got one strength point before breaking permanently. This one's all stragglers, interestingly enough. You know, so that can be completely reconstituted. Anyway, trying to shift over, the Union Fire was capable of putting it out of, you know, pushing them back a little bit so that maybe I can make it a little bit easier over. I don't know. That road seems almost necessary for this movement that I intend. Anyway, keep going. You're used to the standard CWB artillery expenditure, and the way I'm playing this applies. You're immediately questioning this wide outflank that I'm performing. So the supply has to trace back to the Army supply wagon or the edge of the map, if the Army supply wagon's not on the board, the appropriate edge, via road, primary, secondary, and I guess the pikes I'll count as the primary roads here. Okay, great. So here's the problem. If I'm heading out this way, that means I've got to control a road going out this way or a road coming down this way. And that's going to be tough. Now, if I was playing with the RSS optional artillery rules, that doesn't seem to apply. Artillery ammunition is tracked individually. I can fire it, and then once I'm out, at which point maybe I've captured this Turner's Gap area, I'm not going to be in trouble. But since I'm not able to play with that for a number of reasons, one of which is the scenario doesn't give the breakdown that I need for the core resupply capability, I'm going to be stuck to that tracing. That doesn't change much. If I can't trace that, I think it halves my firing capability. Let's see. I just peeked at it because I had some worries about what I'm doing. Yeah, it's going to have the fire capability. That doesn't totally neuter these things. It removes artillery ammo from the track still, and it still allows me to fire at some effectiveness, but it does reduce the power of the artillery that the 9th Corps is going to be delivering if they get into a fight over here, because unless they control one of these road connections, they're just not going to get it, and that's going to be a serious issue, I believe. They notably cannot trace down a path through this track that they're currently following, a trail essentially. Now, with those artillery rolls, and I just wanted to get back to this, basically the game plays two different ways depending on what you take. Although I can't find in the regimental rules that penalty doesn't apply if you can't trace. So maybe even if you expend ammunition, it's not removed. It says replace 27 though, which is the artillery rules as a whole. But it's kind of weird the way it's worded. It says replace 27.0 above if used. This is just the addition. So this would no longer really apply because you track the ammo according to that. So it's kind of like, well, do you replace all of 27 or just this part? I was assuming all of it because some parts of it had to be replaced, like the fact that you don't track the ammo anymore. A little piece of garbage. But perhaps no matter what, if you're unable to trace that line to the Army supply center, your fire is going to be reduced with the assumption that you just don't have as much and you're kind of conserving it. Of course, then you shouldn't be firing as much, right? I don't know. Anyway, there's a little bit of, gosh, it won't work the same if you're using these different roles, that's all. Anyway, I'm moving forward into the Union turn here. I guess I'll finish up the rest of this 11:15 turn, and then we'll be heading into the 11:30 turn, where a lot of reinforcements are coming from both sides. Stacking cost had to be paid. I don't know if I had these guys before, but they're in column now, so they had to split up. The Union is pushing around this way. I can hardly remember what's happening because the difficulties of this stacking unstacking rule. This really adds a significant burden to the play of the game, not just for the Union trying to curve around this way, but the Confederates trying to react to it. It's very hard to maneuver your units in this game in a way that neither GBACW nor CWB tended to have. I am finding it such a fiddly, annoying situation that, you know, I think I'm going to probably stay away from other RSS games. Yes, I have one. But I would rather not play. I mean, I don't know. If they come up with battles like this that I've never played before, yeah, maybe. And I may tweak the rules and throw things out. But this is an irritation that I really don't need. It makes the units far too unmaneuverable for my taste. Now, it may be historically accurate, and that's my problem here, is that quite often I felt like in TSS and even in the CWB games, I'm whipping stuff around way too fast. It's just the headache involved with this. Maybe I'll get used to it. I got used to Great Battles of History. I got used to Musket and Pike, and they have a lot of restrictions on the movement. But if you're used to that fluid movement and don't think you'd like to play something where you have to really pay attention to trying to keep your units, you know, where the units become less mobile because of colliding with each other and such not. You're paying 4 extra movement points to move through a hex. That's, you know, 2/3 of the movement points of an infantry unit, right? So you can move 1 hex usually if you're trying to move through the artillery. And you can see how it's kind of spacing things out, and it's definitely causing trouble with the Confederate reaction to that outflank situation, causing some significant issues there. I had 2 random events. I haven't handled the fire phase yet for the Confederates. 2 random events. The Union had one friendly fire. It didn't have an effect. The Confederates had one desperate stand type of thing, but it affected this brigade. The Confederates get to pick 3 brigades. Well, they only have 3 on the map. I also noticed I had a unit that I had accidentally dragged with me that couldn't have gone, so I reset them back. Alrighty, I guess we go to the fire. The kind of lousy terrain in the route throughs, or at least disordered throughs. This guy was disordered. He's shaken now at the end of the turn. Caused enough disruption that you can see the Confederate lines kind of really becoming more and more shaken up. This routed artillery is still routed. Nobody can do anything about it. I couldn't quite get on top of it and keep my units in command, so I just rolled for a 1 or 2. I think that's enough for this video. We're going to send it up, and, well, we got new stuff coming in soon.